I gotta wait for that. Okay. I can go now. I thought I heard an echo. Good evening and welcome to the July 13th, 2023 regular meeting of San Diego Community Powers Community Advisory Committee. My name is Eddie Price. I'm the chair of the CAC and the representative of the city of San Diego. And tonight is my last night as the chair of the CAC. We welcome members of the public, San Diego Community Power staff, and our committee members joining us in person and online today. I want to thank the staff for making this in-person meeting possible and the city of San Diego for accommodating us today. I will now call the regular meeting of the San Diego Community Advisory Committee of San Diego Community Power to order. As the clerk of today's meeting, Megan will now call the roll.
Committee member Anderson. Committee member Vasilakis.
Present.
Committee member Emerson.
Here.
Committee member Harris.
Present.
Committee member Cazares. Present. Committee member Hammond.
Present.
Committee member Johns.
Present.
Committee member Schofield. Present. Committee member Sclafani.
Present.
Secretary Webb. Present. Vice Chair Castaneda. And Chair Price.
Here.
We have
Vice Chair, let me know she's running late, but she will be there.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the committee member to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are conducting our meeting is located in the traditional territory of the Kumeyaay people. Recognize the Kumeyaay Nation as the rightful stewards of this land and are committed to learning from and working with local indigenous communities to honor their sovereignty, respect their cultures, and support their efforts to heal from the intergenerational trauma, systematic injustices that continue to impact them today. Thank you to the Kumeyaay Nation and all the original stewards of this land. We look forward to working in a collaboration to build a more just, sustainable, and resilient future for all. Oh, I like this part. I would like to welcome Jack Clark as the new Chief Operating Officer of San Diego Community Power. Jack, would you like to say a few words, sir?
Nice to see you again, Chair Price, and thank you for your service at this body. We've worked together many times over the years, so nice to see you again. Members of the committee, my name is Jack Clark. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at San Diego Community Power. A little bit about myself, if you don't mind, I'll spend a moment. I've worked in the San Diego region on sustainable energy since 2010. Working includes a fair bit of work in energy policy, public affairs, marketing, data analytics, customer services, and programming in the energy space in particular. My time at the Center of Sustainable Energy as the Director of Programs, where I worked here regionally, statewide, and nationally in distributed energy resource programs, in particular around market transformation. Most of those initiatives were at scale, engaging in workforce development, working with the Public Utilities Commission, California Energy Commission, California Air Resource Board, Department of Energy, SDG&E closely, and a wide variety of other stakeholders here locally and regionally. I've worked also with investor-owned utilities and municipally owned utilities throughout the state and around the country. Most of that work, as I mentioned, was on a whole host of policy initiatives. And I've worked over that time period very closely with the San Diego regional local governments as well, where I first learned about the CCA movement as we supported the San Diego regional local governments in developing their climate action plans and identifying potential solutions in achieving those goals. Following CSE, I moved on to the city of San Diego as I was the Deputy Director of Energy and Sustainability of the city, where among other things, I was on the CCA feasibility study research team, which led to the development of San Diego Community Power. There also, I represented the city in CCO regulatory proceedings at the Public Utilities Commission, managed the city's utility budget, including more than 3,000 utility accounts on behalf of the city across all rate classes, and worked with staff, SDG&E on account data, analysis and forecasting, and led the development of the city's municipal energy strategy. I also sat for a time on the California Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition's board, representing the San Diego region on multiple statewide and local policies. I also spent several years at Clean Power Lines, the state's largest CCA and fourth largest load serving entity, as a senior director of customer programs, working closely with our regulatory, legislative, and public affairs teams, working closely with our procurement team as well on local procurement initiatives and utilizing data and analytics to design effective customer service engagement and impactful program design. I'm wholeheartedly thrilled to be with you here today, and super excited to be part of the fantastic team at San Diego Community Power. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join.
Thank you, Jack, and welcome. And that concludes the special presentations for the day. We will now take up non-agenda public comment. I want to note that written public comments submitted before the committee meeting are emailed to all CAC members prior to the committee meeting and will be posted on the website at the beginning of the meeting. Megan, do we have any comments?
We have no hands raised.
Are there any items to be withdrawn or reordered on the agenda?
There are not.
All right. Before we get started, I want to note that there are several items on the agenda that we anticipate may have many questions and comments on. To better manage our time, each CAC member will be allotted up to 5 minutes to speak, or the equivalent of 2 to 3 focused questions and/or comments. Questions or comments outside of the scope of what we will be discussing today can be heard at a later meeting. We will now move on to the regular agenda, starting with item number 1, approval of the June CAC minutes.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Motion,
Second.
and motion and seconded. Do we have, Megan, do we have any, I'm on the wrong page.
We don't have any public comment. That was correct. That we do
Okay.
not have any public comment though.
I will now turn it over to the committee members for comments and a motion, and we've done that.
Would you like me to take the vote?
Sure.
Okay. Committee member Vasilakis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Emerson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Harris, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Cazares, how do you vote? Aye. Committee member Hammond, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Johns, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Schofield, how do you vote? Aye. Committee member Sclafani, how do you vote?
Aye.
Secretary Webb, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Price, how do you vote?
Aye.
Oh, and then Vice Chair Castaneda, sorry.
Aye, thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2. I'll
Okay.
turn it over to Jen LeBron to present this item, and I will ask that before every presentation, staff clearly state their name and title for the record.
Thank you, Chair Price. I'm Jen LeBron, the Director of Public Affairs for San Diego Community Power. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. Next slide, please. So San Diego Community Power has been featured in several publications over the last month or so, including a story in the Union Tribune and several trade publications. I didn't feature them all here in regard to our Format Technologies PPA that was passed with our board of directors last month. Both of these story topics depicted San Diego Community Power as the growing startup that we are, that is making significant investments and efforts to not only procure greener, cleaner, more affordable power, but also focused in particular for the Union Tribune article on the ways that we are working with our customers who may be struggling. And so that's a little bit on the earned media front, and we'll be talking a little bit more about earned media in just a moment. Next slide, please. Later this month, we are going to be making an announcement about our community grant awardees. So as you recall, a couple of you helped us determine the folks who would be receiving the community grant funds. And so we will be actually hosting that press conference later this month. And all of you, as our advisory committee members, are invited to attend. We'll be providing more details on that. You'll be getting that in your emails over the next couple of days here. And just so you're aware, all of the awardees have already been notified. They're well aware. We're working very closely with the San Diego Foundation, who is helping us with this project. And we also anticipate several of our board of directors to be in attendance as well. We could not be more thrilled to be able to really use this event as an opportunity to demonstrate to the public that we are putting our money where our mouth is. When we say that we are here to reinvest in the communities that we serve, there is probably no greater opportunity to point to that so directly as through a program like this, where we are using the opportunity to really honor organizations that not only have a stake in making our region better for the future, but also doing work in communities of concern that are going to make a significant impact. So we have to keep it a little under wraps to make sure that we get folks to come to this thing in a few weeks here, but we would love to see each and every single one of you there. I mean, we're getting a big check made, so it'll be a fun time. Next slide, please.
Are there any numbers on the total amount as well as the number of awardees?
We'll be happy to share all that as part of the press announcement. Thank you very much. And so, as you know, we have been in enrollment mode pretty much since day one here at San Diego Community Power. And with our rollout in April, having now concluded and the majority of our customers being rolled over into our service, with the exception of the NEM customers who have yet to have their true updates, we are really taking this opportunity to reimagine public affairs, marketing, and communications for San Diego Community Power. No longer are we the new neighbor, but now we are the trusted service provider, or at least needing to establish ourselves as such. Therefore, one of the things that we're doing is we are growing the team and resetting our goals. So we've got a digital media coordinator who we'll be bringing on August 1st, and we're in the process right now of hiring some public outreach coordinators. While we have some outstanding candidates already in the queue, if you know of anyone who is sort of in an entry-level space, who is a member of the community, has a passion for the work that we do, please send them to our website, have them apply. We'd love to bring them on. And one of the key things about these positions in particular is that from an organizational standpoint, we really look at these as opportunities to bring folks in our community who may not have always thought about a career in energy to be able to get their foot in the door, learn a lot about what we do and who we are, and really take this as an opportunity to pivot into different roles in the organization or continue to grow from a community outreach perspective to really be able to have meaningful relationships within the community. So we're really looking forward to bringing these folks on within the next few months. Next slide, please. And so, like I mentioned, we are refreshing our goals. So one of the big pieces of this is we're working really closely with Civilian and have met with them several times over the last couple of weeks to really change or adjust our messaging. We know a little bit about what works and what doesn't. We're also going to be engaging in market research to be able to know how well our enrollment efforts have really made an impact. While we do have some numbers that indicate we had some good reception there, it's important to conduct market research in order to determine what messages really stuck with people and whether or not perceptions that we've had from the media or things like social media have affected the way people perceive San Diego Community Power. And so we'll be conducting this market research to provide a baseline for us going forward. That way we can really use those indicators to make data-driven decisions going forward. We've got some great information up and down the state about how other CCAs have conducted their messaging, but we know the truth about San Diego. We're a unique little place in California. And because we have such a large customer base as the second largest CCA in the state, we know that there are wildly diverse opinions out there. And so by being able to do this, we can tailor what's worked and what hasn't from other CCAs that may be smaller, but who have an area that may be reflective of one of our member agencies. So we can really take a tailored approach, meet customers where they are, and talk about our organization in a way that's going to make sense for them. And so the other piece of all of this is that we're also building out, particularly when we onboard our digital media coordinator, some long needed collateral, things that y'all have been asking for more than a minute, such as a newsletter, creating targeted mailing lists, creating those event calendars, and really doing all of those tasks that we know we need to do and have not always had the personnel just yet to be able to accomplish. But we couldn't be more excited about the next phase of what public affairs is going to look like. And I cannot wait to share with you next month what those plans really look like in a more strategic manner. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or listen to any comments you all may have.
Any public comment, Megan?
There is no hands raised at this time.
CAC members? Yes, ma'am.
Just one quick question. What is the date of the awards?
We'll be sending that to you via email.
Great.
So you don't have the date?
We have a date, but we want to make sure that those who are invited to have that, since we are in a public forum at the moment, and there may be a little bit of flexibility that may be required.
That's kind of like the same reason you wouldn't like to tell us how much money is being granted and how many members or how many entities it's being granted to.
So we want to make sure that the news is still news when we share it, Eddie. So Chair Price, excuse me.
Right.
For the informality.
Well, okay. Whatever. Thank you. Are you done now?
Well, you want me to be.
Well, I thought you were done with you. Oh,
I'm done.
To
Yes.
ask
In case anybody has questions.
anybody else.
any CAC members have any questions?
I am done then. Thank you.
Item number 3 on the agenda.
Good evening, Chair Price, members of the CAC. My name is Lucas Uto. I'm the Director of Data Analytics and Account Services. Great to see you all this evening. I'll be giving you a quick update on customer operations in terms of our participations, rates, and what we're seeing as far as why customers are opting out, particularly in National City and unincorporated County of San Diego, simply because we're still in that active mass enrollment phase until March of 2024. On to the next slide, please. So once again, similar to last month, our participation rates by accounts are where we want them to be, 96%. The target is 95%, but you can clearly see in terms of the distribution across the 7 member agencies, that the participation rates in Encinitas in particular and in the County of San Diego are falling a little bit below that 95% target. For Encinitas in particular, as a function of the default being Power 100, that is actually tracking with what we see across the state in other member agencies and other CCA territories. But for the County of San Diego in particular, the participation rates being lower than the target essentially is a little bit out of the norm, but not so much in terms of what we've seen as far as what customers are concerned about. And I'll cover that in the next slide, please. So this actually takes a deeper dive into the County of San Diego in particular. You can clearly see that for the county, like other member agencies, the number one opt-out reason is dislike being automatically enrolled, followed by the decline to provide. So customers just opted out without providing us any specific reason. Some do, some don't. It's just a multitude of reasons there. We can drill a little bit more if the CSE would like. But the third thing is the rate or cost concerns, meaning customers perhaps are thinking that, by being enrolled in STCP service, that we are perhaps a little bit more expensive than SDG&E, something which isn't necessarily true. our board did approve rates that are essentially giving customers savings, especially now in the summer where the rates are slightly higher than the winter rates. And so part of what we're seeing this data tell us is perhaps, the items that Jen was talking about, meeting customers where they are and setting the record straight. Again, there's a great work that the members of the CAC are doing, so we appreciate that. But a little bit more needs to be done, particularly in the county, to essentially counter perhaps some of the opt-out reasons that we're seeing customers provide. And then obviously in terms of how customers are opting out, it is still consistent with what we're seeing across the other member agencies. A lot of customers are self-serving their opt-outs via the web, as well as essentially calling our contact center and processing those opt-outs. Now, the one thing that I'll say is customers calling into the contact center and actually talking to an actual customer service representative, I think we have a better chance of retaining that customer once we hear what it is that they're concerned about or what it is that is prompting them to opt out. Whereas we don't get the same luxury for customers who are processing opt-outs on the website. So again, if you haven't called our contact center, I definitely greatly implore you to do so. I think we have one of, if not the best contact center out there, and please take a moment to give them a call, just so you can find it out for yourself. On to the next slide, please.
Can I question,
Absolutely.
do you have the data, especially where the county is concerned, geographically located?
We do.
Because the county is big and diverse, and there might be certain reasons come. Okay.
We certainly do. And I think I actually presented to the CAC, maybe I want to say 2 months ago, the actual drill down to which specific areas of the county we're seeing the most opt-outs emanate from. And essentially what we're using that data set for, Chair Price, is to create very targeted messaging outreach efforts to make sure that, those customers are being provided the adequate information to make much more informed decisions, as opposed to perhaps, hearing something that may not be factually accurate. And that is the piece that Jen and her awesome team are working towards.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So similar trends for National City. The number one opt-out reason, again, is dislike being automatically enrolled, followed by rate of cost concerns. So for the rate of cost concerns, the one thing that I definitely would like to say is we did work collaboratively with SDG&E to release a joint rate mailer. I'm pretty sure some of you or most of you got it. And within that joint rate mailer, it clearly shows the value proposition that we're offering, meaning we are cheaper than SDG&E in all rates. And we are obviously providing a better, much more superior energy product in Power On, which has more renewable energy content than the competition from SDG&E. But again, similar trends for National City, where a lot of our customers are processing their opt-outs through the web, a little bit through the contact center, and then through the interactive voice response, which is essentially just the self-service option within the phone line tree within the contact center. But similar trends here. And finally, what does this look like in terms of those customers that are opting up and or down? Please, can we move over to the next slide? And so this essentially captures the opt up to Power 100, as well as the opt downs. Obviously, customers can exercise their choice to either opt up to Power 100 and elect to opt down to Power On during their next bill rate cycle. And this is what we're seeing in terms of the opt ups. So definitely I want to call to your attention, City of Encinitas. For those customers that are opted in, meaning they are enrolled in SDCP service, what we're seeing is a lot of them have stayed opted in at the Power 100 level. So 98.3 participation rates, which is great. So thank you to member Gary Johns and Tara for a really tremendous job there, working within your community of Encinitas. And then in terms of the participation across the other member agencies, it's not where we quite want it to be. And so a little bit more work needs to be done there. But again, all things considered, these are the numbers that we're seeing in terms of our opt-ups and opt-downs across the member agencies. And that actually concludes my presentation for today. More than glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public?
There are no hands raised.
CAC members? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Not a question so much, just to reiterate, Anna Webb, Imperial Beach. What we spoke about maybe a meeting or two ago is because I pulled up my bill again because SDGE didn't have to post their electric generation charge out separately on their bill. And now the CCA has to post that, correct? And it like my bill, I'll just say, it's $85.53 for the generation cost, whereas my electric is 10 and my gas charges are 17. So it looks like if people are looking at their bill, like SDCP, the CCA is ramping the rates up. We know that's not true, but if we could turn that into a message to make sure people understand the difference of when a CCA comes and becomes involved, that they're required to line item that, whereas prior they weren't. Just wanted to like read, and thank you for your data. I love data.
My pleasure. That is actually an excellent point you raised. I think you're referring to the PCI line item, call out on a CCA customer bill. Whereas if a customer is bundled, they don't see that. So
Right.
the automatic perception is it's an additional charge. But in actuality, it isn't. You know, it's just that the PCIA for a bundle customer, so a customer who's taking service, who's taking generation service from SDG&E, they're paying for the PCIA, but it's embedded as part of the generation rate that they're paying on their bill. And I absolutely agree that it would be really worthwhile for it to be called out and itemized on a bill, on a bundle bill, just so that there isn't that misconception that PCIA is something that's inherent only to a CCA customer.
And I would like to point out, of course, I don't get a paper bill. You know, I just get it in my notifications every month. And so there's, you know, only 4 charges listed. And so it doesn't get into the weeds unless I click on it and look at my actual bill of my usage and all that. So it just shows these 4 charges, and the electric generation / CCA is like 8 times what my electric charges are. So I just think that might be a grave misconception, you know, to people who do get their bills electronically. I can send a screenshot. I don't know if you guys get it too, or if you've seen it. So it's just, you know, it's kind of shocking. You look at it, but we know, because we know that that's not accurate. So we need to make that clear to the public, in my opinion.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And again, I mean, if you'd like for us to take a look at your individual bill, please feel free.
I don't mind.
To reach
Just
out.
screenshot it and send it to Jen. She can distribute it out.
Please send it to CMOs first.
See ya. Gotcha. Okay.
Question.
Yes, sir.
As I recall, the county of San Diego had a fairly large percentage of NEM customers. And at this point, less than half are enrolled, I would assume, given the time of year. There's an opportunity there because of the incentive that or value that SDCP offers solar customers over SDG&E rates. I'm just wondering if that would bring up the enrollment in the county and drop.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. Thank you, committee member David Harris. Yes, you're absolutely right. We are still in active mass enrollment for non-customers in the 2 newest member agencies, particularly in the county of San Diego. Every single month between now and March of 2024, we're scheduled to enroll close to 5,000 accounts. And so you're absolutely right. The rate at which we're enrolling accounts is much bigger in magnitude than the rate at which customers are opting out. But that's not to say that customers aren't opting out. From my perspective, I definitely do think, in terms of, the opt-outs and participation rates in the county being lower than they are, it's a function of multiple variables. And ones that, we're working very closely with our marketing, engagement and outreach team to essentially address the very specific variables across the various zip codes where we are seeing a lot more of the opt-outs. I personally live around the unincorporated, well, I live in incorporated El Cajon, but I have neighbors on the cusp. So they come to me and ask me questions sometimes, and essentially what they're seeing again on Nextdoor is the fact that we're more expensive, or perhaps we don't have any value proposition for them to realize. And I'm just telling them that, hey, the information is available, it's publicly available. You can go and read it for yourself. We do have the joint rate mailer that isn't our word just alone, right? We've worked with SDG&E showing value, and in showing customers the source of truth, which is, publicly available information, they're actually making better informed decisions. And that's what we have to do on a larger scale, as opposed to like me just talking to my neighbor next door. But again, those conversations are important because, by me providing that information to my next door neighbor, that next door neighbor goes and talks to the other next door neighbor. And so then, we start forming that chain of truth to allow for customers to make informed decisions. And Jen and her team will take that and essentially amplify it, just so that we can provide the correct information to allow for these customers to truly make well-informed decisions.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Well, thank you, Lucas. Item number 4, update on regulatory and legislative affairs.
Good evening, everyone. Laura Fernandez, Director of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs here. I'd like to provide a brief update on what's happening in Sacramento first, and then you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Chair and members of the CEC. My name is Stephen Gunther. I'm the Senior Regulatory Analyst at SDCP.
Next slide, please. First, I want to set the stage a little bit with some review from material covered at our April strategic planning meeting. So you all know this, but just a reminder, what makes SDCP different from investor-owned utilities is that we have locally elected officials who get to decide whether their community joins the CCA. And once a community joins the CCA, the decision-making authority is held by the officials who comprise the board. So we're different from an IOU in a lot of ways, but critically, we have both rate making and procurement autonomy. The board sets our rates, and they also have the authority to decide what resources are procured for the communities that we serve. So the real value of CCAs is that we're able to tailor our procurement rates and programs to meet local needs and priorities. But since CCAs are new, at least when compared with IOUs or publicly owned utilities, there's a lack of clarity surrounding jurisdiction over CCAs, and we're constantly fighting battles to protect our procurement and rate making, rate setting autonomy, which leads me to the discussion we will have next. Next slide, please. So I also discussed this back in April, but just as a quick reminder, the administration in February put out a budget change proposal that would have expanded CPUC jurisdiction over CCA procurement autonomy, would have also created a new central procurement process to allow the Department of Water Resources or investor-owned utilities to procure resources on behalf of other load serving entities like CCAs. And it also would have created additional capacity payments that in essence would have been a third penalty for load serving entities that were unable to meet RA requirements. These same proposals were put into a policy bill, AB 1373. It's carried by Chair of the Assembly Energy Committee, Eddie Garcia. Ultimately, the proposals did not make it into the budget that was passed by June 30th. And AB 1373 has not been heard in the Senate Energy Committee, meaning that it will miss the policy committee deadline, which is tomorrow. But because it has an urgency clause, it still could get heard after the legislature reconvenes after summer recess. Next slide, please. So STCP and CalCCA have worked really hard lobbying all of the legislative vehicles that have these similar proposals. AB 1373 in particular was significantly improved from the initial introduction of the bill. The remaining concern with the bill is around central procurement, and CalCCA has sent a letter requesting one additional amendment, which you see on the slide here. CalCCA has removed their opposition, but SDCP has remained opposed because we have significant concerns still. I think that us keeping our opposed position has given us leverage because we do have stakeholders in Sacramento coming to us now asking what it is that we want. So just to go into this a little bit more, the issue with central procurement is that it would impede our ability to procure resources on behalf of our community. So the requested amendment that you see on the slide here would ensure that load serving entities have an opportunity to procure resources on behalf of their customers prior to a central procurement entity being directed to procure those resources on behalf of another load serving entity. Next slide, please. So this is the remainder of the legislative calendar for the year. As I mentioned previously, the policy committee deadline is tomorrow, and AB 1373 will miss this deadline. And normally a bill would die if it missed this deadline, but because it has an urgency clause, it could be heard in committee after summer recess, but it would need to pass the fiscal deadline by September 1st. So it's possible these proposals could come back after the summer recess, and they could come back either in 1373 or in another budget trailer bill. But that would also have to pass by September 14th. So I explain all of this wonky process because I wish that I could direct you all on, where to send letters or show up to a hearing regarding these proposals, but it's been like a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole since they keep changing the legislative vehicle where these proposals are being addressed. And so it's kind of been double or triple the amount of work we would normally have to do on a bill. But I want you to know that we're continuing to work with our local delegations so they know our concerns on the bill, and we're continuing to have meetings on it, even though we've neutralized the initial concerns with the budget and we've neutralized concerns with the bill. We do know that it could and likely will come back. So we're continuing to have conversations. Next week, we're meeting with the author's staff. So I want you to know it's still progress. And just to answer a few questions I've gotten around this. The central procurement proposal for Department of Water Resources is limited to offshore wind and geothermal resources, and CalCCA doesn't oppose Department of Water Resources being the procurement rule if it's limited to the specific resources. But our position around central procurement is not about being against or for certain resource types, but it's really about protecting our ability to have that local procurement autonomy that I talked about on the first slide. So that's all I have for the legislative update, and Stephen's going to give some regulatory updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So moving from Sacramento to San Francisco, where the Public Utility Commission is, I'll be speaking first about a recent decision in the resource adequacy proceeding. So just as a very high level reminder, resource adequacy is the program that ensures safe and reliable operation of the grid, ensuring that there's sufficient capacity to meet the state's load. And that's managed by the California Public Utility Commission in coordination with the California Independent System Operator, CAISO. So each load serving entity, including SDCP, has obligations to procure a certain amount of capacity based on their load. And we have to show that in annual filings and monthly filings to demonstrate that we have procured that capacity and have active contracts. Next slide, please. So there was a recent decision earlier this month that was changing a lot of the implementation details of how the resource adequacy framework is run, but specifically we wanted to bring to this group's attention is there was a problematic element around LSC expansion. And what the decision said is basically a CCA that has been deficient on their resource adequacy showings, either that year ahead or month ahead, would be barred from expanding their service territory 2 years following that deficiency. So if SDCP were to want to expand and a new city join, if we were deficient on our RA within 2 years, 2 years prior to that implementation plan being filed, we would not be able to expand that service territory. And this would go into effect starting in September for the month ahead showings, and then for for the year ahead. Next slide, please. So this is clearly very problematic. It is an overreach of the CPUC's jurisdiction on a CCA's ability to expand its territory. If a city votes to join, it should be their choice to join a CCA. So that is problematic, and it's extra problematic because the current RA market is extremely tight right now. And there's literally in some cases not enough capacity to meet the obligations that all the LLCs currently have to show based on how the RA framework is set up. So there's a high likelihood that CCAs, including SDCP, may have deficiencies in the coming months and would then bar future CCA expansion. Cal CCA has argued, the jurisdictional issues and made some other comments about the current, that there needs to be an evaluation of the current market and the ability to meet these obligations. But unfortunately, the decision moved ahead in early July. But we are working with Cal CCA to continue exploring options to fight this element of the decision, including filing an application for rehearing and a potentially appealing to a superior court if it comes to that. So we're still working very closely with our trade association because this is very an important element for all CCAs in the state to fight. So we're continuing to do that at the CPUC. Next slide, please. So the next issue I want to discuss is it's been getting some press in the news around the income graduated fixed charges proposal. I would like to provide some background on this, on the IGCF. Just to level set on where this came from. This is not a SDG&E specific proposal, but it actually came through state legislation last year that directed the IOUs to look into establishing for residential customers fixed charges to recover costs that would vary based on the income of the household. And the statute, as you can see in this quote, says specifically that the average monthly bill should be reduced for low-income ratepayers based on this moving the charges into a fixed charge. CPUC is taking up the implementation of this bill and is looking at it in the demand flexibility proceeding. And in April, the IOUs filed a joint opening testimony as well as other parties with their proposals on what this could look like in implementation. But I'll note later that those initial proposals in the opening testimony are essentially moot at this point because of a recent ruling at the CPUC that's going to take a step back and have more formal proposals from each IOU in an application. So they give an idea of what will be coming, but these proposals at this point are not what we'll see later in the process. Next slide, please. So this is some examples of what the potential fixed charge would look like, and at a very high level, current rates, your distribution and transmission charges vary based on the amount of electricity you use. So it's on a cents per kilowatt rate. And this would take some of the costs, and rather charging at a cents per kilowatt rate, it would be in a flat fixed charge that would be the same every month on your bill. And again, that would vary based on the income of the household. The bill itself said, the legislation said it needs to be at least 3 different income brackets. The joint IOUs proposed 4 different income brackets, but that is, it has to be at least 3. So the costs that were initially would be on a volumetric basis would be on a fixed basis. Next slide, please.
On that slide, is there any reason why SDG&E is the highest in all categories?
Well, our rates are the highest. So currently they're the highest. So they're recovering the same revenue. It's just now that it's distributed in a different way. So they're covering it customers via this fixed charge and with some volumetric charges. So because they're collecting, the rates are the highest here, it would follow that their rates would be the highest in this fixed as well.
It should be pointed out that the fixed fee comes from the reduction. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but.
Yeah, so the volumetric charge would be reduced because now a lot of those costs are being recovered in the fixed charge, so.
Right.
Yeah, technically, the idea is SDG&E is recovering the same total cost, but now it's being distributed in a fixed fashion. Partially fixed fashion on the bill. Some of it will still be volumetric. But you know, that has different implications on different customers and the amount of electricity used. So that's a lot of what the debate is right now.
Since we're a public forum, I think it's, you may have mentioned it, I was taking notes, but I didn't hear it. But it's very important to point out that fixed fee applies to delivery charges, not to generation charges. It doesn't affect our rates to the public, to our customers. It's purely a different way that SDG&E, in our case, is collecting money for running the grid and delivering the electricity, and that we have no gain from this process.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. That actually is in this slide right here, and I'll get into that in a moment. But
Oh,
take the other question.
everybody man.
Order.
I have a question on the previous slide, this one.
Slide, please.
I just wanted to know, so the list that you have on here, is that roughly the costs that are going to be in the income brackets, in the charges included? Because that was really confusing to me, because there are so many even different categories of charges on my bill that I was like, which ones? And I really appreciate Gary's comment that this really isn't specifically affecting us monetarily, but it's really going to affect our customers. And so I really
They're gonna blame
appreciate,
us.
well, I really appreciate any amount of education that we can do, because it's really going to affect them. So thank you.
Yes, and to clarify your first part of that question, yes, that is an example of the parts of the bill that would be moved into the fixed.
Excuse me. And I did have a question. I'm sorry, I'm getting one of those tickles. My question is, so if we have low income people and they tend to carry a very light footprint, is this going to be a blanket fixed rate for this income to back income and this and that? To where, pardon me, you don't have control if you're, very energy minded. Sorry.
Yeah, so there, as currently proposed, like a portion of your bill would always contain this fixed charge, and to previous points made, there will still be your generation portion of the bill will vary based on your usage. The SDCP portion of the bill will vary on usage, and there will still be some charges that on the distribution side that are volumetric level, but the point of the fixed rate is everyone will pay a fixed charge monthly. And based on your income bracket, it would be across the board. So in this proposal, those customers on care would be paying $15 a month, and then other charges would be on top of that.
Thank you.
And so who's gonna take care of collecting the economic data of customers? And sourcing all that out?
That is, yeah, that's being worked out through the proceeding. The investor and utilities have publicly commented that they do not want to be in charge of that, and they've asked to have a third party that the CPC would work with. The franchise tax board would potentially be the third party entity.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so to the point made earlier, the proposed rate impacts are currently those recovered on SDG&E's side of the bill, so transmission and distribution. So it's not not directly competitive with SDCP's generation rates. That's what currently our involvement with Cal CCA has been limited to ensuring that generation rates and CCA competitiveness is not impacted. But to the points made, there will be a lot of implications to our customers. So we're tracking it very closely as the proceeding moves forward, and it will be ensuring that we understand what the impacts for customers are, and then we'll also be addressing other considerations that come up around customer education and the bill presentment, so there isn't that confusion. I also wanted to note beyond Cal CCA, there are a lot of groups that are actively involved in this proceeding, including several organizations that filed proposals in that opening testimony, kind of alternate proposals to what the joint IOUs proposed on how this could look, including the Public Advocates Office, Sierra Club, the Solar Energy Industries Association. There's a lot of active voices in this proceeding, and those are just the organizations that filed proposals. There's a lot others that are filing comments and involved as well. So I just wanted to note that this is there's a lot of active groups representing different industries, different voices. Next slide, please. And then the main update for this meeting is some procedural next steps and timing. So I did want to clarify some of the timing considerations. Last month, there was a ruling by the administrative law judge in charge of this proceeding. And as I mentioned earlier, making some of those proposals moot in a way because they, in this ruling, set out questions for an implementation pathway. So how these rates should be rolled out in a phased process, setting guiding principles, potential for working groups leading up to these proposals. And there'll be a proposed decision in Q1 of 2024 that will kind of outline those guiding principles on how these proposals should look and how this should be implemented. And then after that, we'll start the process of when the IOUs will be filing applications for their rate design and seeking approval on that. So that will be a lengthy process with a lot of opportunity for engagement. And then the ruling specifically said that they expect the earliest version of the first phase of these fixed charges would be implemented at the end of 2026. So there is a significant timeline leading up to the implementation of this new change. And like I said, SDCP will be tracking it very closely. That ends my presentation. You take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public?
We do have one hand raised, or two hands raised. Rob Howard, you should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Rob Howard. I'm actually an Oceanside resident, but I do a lot of work in the territory. Two things. I had a question. Does the resource adequacy decision in any way benefit the CCAs? And I would ask the same question, in any way does it benefit the investor-owned utilities? I think I know the answer to that, but I just thought I'd throw it out there and have that question. And on AB 205, the frustration I have is that it was a trailer bill, so no one knew about it. That's why it's kind of coming out. A couple of questions that for CCA to monitor would be the issue around households. How are they going to decide it? Why am I giving all my personal tax information to the investor-owned utility? All a third party does, they're really not masking it. The investor-owned utility will still get that information. We're talking about trying to support those who are on care and other things, but think about it. If you're a wealthier individual, you'll have instruments that allow you basically to have zero household income, and therefore you're paying in the lowest rate. So there are a lot of holes in this thing. The other one is how and where the information, where it's going to be coming from, will the CCAs have access to that same information that the investor-owned utility is going to be getting. So I'm frustrated with it. It's just, in my opinion, it's bad. There's also, lastly, what is the incentive for people to conserve if they're paying a flat rate? I wasn't a big time of use fan, but I understood how the grid works. And if no one is conserving in these hot days, now we're going to have other issues making the resource adequacy position worse, making available resources during this period worse. I'm trying to find how this is going to help us from an engineering perspective and providing power to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We have another speaker, Sandra Robinson. You should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to Chair Price and to all of the CAC committee members. So I do have some similar concerns that Rob brought up as far as energy efficiency, that this would potentially counter that. Although I did hear one of the CAC members mention earlier that most low-income LMI customers do have a lower footprint, which is accurate, although it doesn't encourage conservation from our SB 100 legislation. But in addition to that, I'm also concerned that this particular fixed rate is only applied to residential customers. And so a lot of inquiries that I've received, and I'm also chair of the Environmental Climate Justice with the NAACP, is, and this CDSP is part of our jurisdiction as well, is business customers. So this bill looks like it's only addressing residential customers. What is the impact to business customers, or is all of the transmission and distribution charges are now being shifted to residential customers only? So I was just curious if anyone had any questions or comments about that. And then I also just want to state that I appreciate hearing that you all are opposing the AB 1373, because it almost sounds like taking away your ability to make purchases is almost trying to convert this particular CCA into an IOU or maybe a product of the PUC directly. So I just want to say that I do appreciate that, even though we do want more local energy, and that's another topic for another time. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Sir.
I just wanted to thank Laura and Stephen for the personal effort and energy that you put into monitoring these issues. You know, we can draw a clear line connecting the communities that we represent to the effort and the energy that you put into your work, and to the alignment that that creates with cost savings and benefits back to the community. So I'm just very happy to know that you're out in front of these issues, you're clearly on top of it, have command of the material. I trust that you're advocating for everyone here's interest, and you understand these communities, whereas central procurement or some of these other organizations that you discussed, they're maybe looking at things from a state level, which is a little bit different. So I understand that we and San Diego Community Power and yourselves have one voice among many in these issues, but it is acknowledged and appreciated.
Thank you. Sir.
I just, thank you. These are my favorite presentations, so I always appreciate hearing them. And I know on the resource adequacy side, that is a very concerning long-term problem. I just wanted to know, aside from these really bad proposals to try and fix this issue, are there any other ideas percolating in any of these forums that may provide us with an outcome that we would want? Or is it still kind of just like, we're not entirely sure yet? I can start. Yeah, I mean, the decision was just voted out earlier this month. So we're just working with Cal CCA on the process for first need to exhaust all administrative pathways to write the decision and make an appeal it. So, it's very early to know kind of, we haven't even moved to the application for rehearing yet. That's currently potentially working on how that would look. So I can't with any confidence say how that process will unfold. But right now, those are the kind of the pathways we see to fight this. Do you have anything to add?
I'll just say that the application for a hearing is it's just a step we have to take. We don't think the CPUC will actually change anything that they've already done. So then the next step would be to take it to the court system. And generally, I am not in favor of going to the court system because they almost always uphold the CPUC's decisions. But I will say that the courts are least deferential when it comes to the jurisdiction of the CPUC. And I think that we have very strong legal arguments there. And if we did not succeed there, we do have thoughts on next steps that I'm happy to share with you offline.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Let us know how we can be helpful, either working with our representatives who are elected or, folks that we know out in the community who are very vocal. And thank you for Rob and Sonia for dialing in because this is a very important issue. And I also really appreciate just the political savvy that y'all are deploying with SDCP and leveraging what is a nearly 1 million customer organization in these bodies, because I don't think they're used to that. And yeah, so that's just very much appreciated. I really appreciate the political savvy.
Thank you. And we're very lucky to have great ties in the community with all of you and also a very strong delegation in Sacramento. So that's definitely working in our favor. And thanks for all that you've done for us.
If it does go to the court, do we have any, is there a way to know which court it will go to? What area, Southern California, Northern California?
I think it'd be the 3rd district because the CPUC.
Chair.
That's interesting. Yes, sir.
I have hopefully 2 brief questions. My first.
Take your time because I have to go to the restroom, so
Okay.
make it a little bit
Well,
longer.
I'll stretch it then. First one for Laura, regarding, Cal CCA dropping, opposition. But, SDCP still pursuing the one additional amendment. I was just wondering, typically, well, not typically, but many times, we are working in conjunction with others, CCAs. So I was just wondering if there's other CCAs that are together with us on maintaining the opposition to that one last point.
Yeah, there's at least 2 other CCAs that have kept their opposition to date. And to be clear, Cal CCA is requesting the same amendment. So they changed their position to neutral on the bill because they wanted to acknowledge that a lot of improvements and a lot of work was done. It is not perfect, and they still have the same concern around IOU central procurement that we do. But because so much progress was made, they felt the need to remove opposition. I was like, we're winning, why stop now? So we kept our opposed position, and we weren't the only CCA doing that. So did that answer your question? That, yeah, we're not alone. And
It'd be nice if you named the other 2 CCAs.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy is one, and then I'd have to confirm the second one. I don't want to get that one wrong.
Yeah. And then on resource adequacy, I'm trying to imagine, resource adequacy is kind of like a commodity, right? And so the question is, why does increasing our we're being asked to increase ours because some other city is moving from them to us? So why doesn't resource adequacy become available because that city is moving? And so the resource adequacy seems like the RA should go with the city. There should be some kind of association. I don't know.
Yeah, you're getting some snaps from the audience because this was actually
Rock star, dude.
you're asking all of the right questions and you're making a whole lot of sense. And my team's growing if you have any interest now. Your head is exactly in the right space. So at the CPUC, there was a proceeding addressing PCIA. We waited for a decision for a long time, and we're making some arguments like exactly like what you're making, that it makes sense that SCG&E or whatever IOU bought energy, bought resource adequacy on behalf of the customers that we are now serving. So why don't we have at least the option to purchase that at a fair price? And when it comes to RPS, renewable energy, we did get that option, but the CPUC kind of split the baby and they said SCG&E gets to keep the RA, but they have to sell you the RPS energy at a fair price. Why did they do that? That's a story for another day. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so, and there was also a legislative effort, SB 612, prior to that decision coming out, that made these same arguments. We were trying to make the same push that we should have the ability to buy the RA, to buy the RPS energy at a fair price, since it was purchased on behalf of our customers. But to date, when it comes to RA, the IOUs have been able to hold that very close to their chest and have not been required to sell it to us at a fair price.
Yeah, it was really a shame that SB 612 got shot down in a very indirect way without,
Yeah, and it was
a lot of support, but all of a sudden.
Yeah, and
Gotta go.
and a big reason for that was that the CPUC finally came out with the decision and they said, you're gonna get to buy the RPS energy at a fair price. But the RA piece did not.
Okay.
To this day doesn't make sense to me, nor does it make sense to you. So you're right there with us. We wish we had that ability.
Thank you.
Anything to add? Cool.
Any more questions? Well, thank you. Oh,
Hi, so I gotta turn this on. Lawrence Emerson, National City, CAC. Member, I just wondered if nationwide, there's been examples of these kind of fixed rates applied in a similar fashion. And then what was the impact to solar and energy storage deployment or growing of those or hindering those? Those are kind of general questions. Maybe you don't have the answers, but it'd be interesting to find out that information as you do your work, if we can find that out. Also, the timeline, I don't know if you can go back to that last slide. I'm trying to understand, once the judge comes back with some proposed decision on implementation pathway, is everything locked in, or when do we have a chance to make comment, and can we change the implementation pathway even after that is done?
Yeah, so the implementation pathway will kind of lay out what the process will be to get to the final result. So that's where the proposed decision will decide whether or not there'll be working groups established, what kind of questions need to be answered, what kind of engagement levels there will be. And then there'll be, a period of over a year where that's all getting worked out through the application process. But these legislation does dictate that IOUs are authorized to create and these graduated fixed charges and are required to do so. So something will happen. It's just a matter of what the end result will look like. But yeah, the decision will kind of lay out what those next steps are and kind of set the parameters and the guiding principles.
Okay, so we will have a chance to make comments, and hopefully in a way that would, so there would not be a negative impact to solar or energy storage in our infill of our community. That would be one of our goals. It would be is to affect the way it's implemented and make sure it comes out in a positive way rather than negatively affecting those. And maybe we should talk to more solar companies and how they perceive this might affect their business. I talked with one solar company I'm familiar with. The April 14th deadline, that they stopped taking applications in March because it's too hectic. And for the last 4 months, they're booked up for a year to do all those projects that people wanted to stay on NEMA 2. And they haven't taken any new customers until just recently. They're starting to get new customers, but again, those are probably going to be a year away because they had such a big backlog. So it'd be interesting to hear what they think the effect will be on future customers, whether it'll decrease, increase, and Separately, geothermal offshore wind, I've mentioned before, I think the statewide, we need to move forward on geothermal. Because that's going to help during the evening, during the night. And it's a 24-hour energy use. So I don't know if going through a central processing is the best, but I think that collectively we should move forward on those kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Carolyn Schofield from Chula Vista. And I'd like to kind of add on to part of what Larry was talking about. My concern would be finding out the impact of the new system of the fixed rates, especially on all of the different classes and situations of the different customers that we serve, because some customers are paying more of the fixed charges that, you know, the charges that would go into this particular structure. And so I feel really strongly that all of our customers need to be able to electrify. And in order to do that, all of these rates will matter. So I guess that's where I feel like this issue affects us in some ways the most, because what we want for our community and what we all need to be able to do is electrify. And so we're kind of being held, you know, hostage in some ways by different kinds of rates. So thank you. And thank you so much for addressing the issue and going through all this with us.
Yes, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If I could just tag on to Carolyn's comment, because like, for example, in many of our partner regions or cities, some people don't have air conditioning, you know, at all. Okay, then you've got more inland where they have to have air conditioning. And so how would they pull those wires apart to figure out what a blanket fixed rate would be for everyone? When, you know, you're looking at a $450 bill versus a $110 bill, you know? So I just throw that out, and thank you, Carolyn, for your comment. And thank you.
Chair, you did have Sanja raise her hand again.
Yeah.
Sonia, my apologies, Sonia. She raised her hand again. She did have a few, like about a little over a minute left, if you wanted to let her speak.
Sure.
Sonia, you should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Price, and to all of our CAC committee members. I also wanted to bring up the point on this fixed rate. I know that the Protect Our Communities Foundation is also fighting in the JRC, and I think it's necessary to also consider whatever that fixed rate price is proposed, how would the general rate cases, which with having like a 10.4 rate increase, impact those rates? Because based on just my basic math right now, it doesn't seem like that fixed rate will remain fixed. And I was wondering if you all have answers to that. And I also raised my hand earlier in the meeting during the when it was asked for questions on the approval of June's meeting minutes. And so my question on that was on the Ormat and Brawley project out in Imperial. I just wanted to mention real briefly if there's been any community engagement with that community on that particular solar plus storage proposal. So that was one of my questions, because I am concerned about that, considering what happened with Hakumba. So just want to kind of curious if there has been any community engagement and if that proposal of the community benefits have already been shared with that community. Thank you.
If anybody else have heard questions? Well, Sonia, I don't know. We will get back to you on that. Any more questions or comments?
There's no other hands raised.
Okay, item number 5, update on sustainable and equitable workforce policy. Thank you.
Always mess this up. Is this on? Now it is. All right. Good evening, Byron Bosworth, Managing Director, Wichita Public Services team. Good to see you all here. Good. This is a fun place to be, better than Zoom for sure. So we're here as a quick kind of status update on our energy proposal, issue criteria, and our workforce policy that kind of goes along with that or rise in parallel to that. So I'll try to keep it brief. I know we're on item 5 out of 12, and we're standing between you all and dinner, but happy to take questions and go in as much depth as you want. Thank you. So again, this is more of a status update on where we are in the process and not to bury the lead. The main takeaway here is we're about to come back to you all in a few months with updates on the evaluation criteria, but it's been a while since we talked about it. I just want to look you guys in and let you know where we stand, and then we'll come back to both you all see the boards this fall. Background of this line is a whole lot of text. I'll save you the reading, but if you want, there's there for your reference. But for each, we're talking about the wholesale, large utility scale power projects that come in for our review and potential contracting through solicitations or potentially bilaterally. We use an evaluation criteria for that, so we can be consistent in our review, make sure that we are again mainly transparent and consistent in how we review these projects and how we select those that we want to contract with for provide customers with renewable energy. So before I started, before we launched in 2020, we had a station and used an interim evaluation criteria at that point. We then use that again for our local request for information. Local RFI is ongoing. The evaluation criteria has been tweaked a little bit. Over time, it's evolved a couple different times. So we maintain the interim evaluation criteria, proposed a revision to the board in March of last year. And I think our intent as staff was to call that the final evaluation criteria and be good. We got some very good feedback from the board. They said, yeah, sure. The revised one can be a revised interim, but we want to do more work on this and then see the final one come back. So we're kicking off that process this summer now and into this fall. And so again, the preview here is we'll go back to you guys with proposals in the next 2 months here. Next slide, please. So just to refresh, and again, this is really laying groundwork here. So we have a little bit of background as we come back to you guys in the fall. This is our a snapshot of how a summary from our evaluation criteria. You can see on the left side, you got, and these are all anonymous projects, kind of scraped of any real data, but might have 8 different projects. Typically, we'll have 40 or 50, but for sake of simplifying, or maybe showing a short list, this is 8 projects here, top to bottom, and then you see quick summary stats of a few of them, and then left to right across the top, 6 different factors that we score.
Sorry,
Is my time up? You can see the project location and the price of the economic evaluation price value, the development score, community benefits, workforce development, and then environmental attributes left to right, and scored again all on a high, medium, low. And that's generally how we score these things. And again, you see them with lots of green, typically flip to the top, and those with more of the yellows and reds or oranges, same to the bottom. And in review, with our energy contract working group, which is a member of a subset of our board of directors, with staff ups as well, we'll review and select those to continue with. And usually there's a bit of an iterative process as we move forward in contracting. So that's our current process. This is the interim, and I guess like the scope of this update today is just kind of the workforce development process and the scope of that. So one of 6 factors. I think the one we're here to talk about today briefly is the workforce development scoring. Yes.
Yeah, if I may, what did neutral mean on the last slide?
Last slide, we will get to that in a couple.
Okay.
So if we go to the next slide, but it's good. Thanks for the transition. You read my mind and you did appreciate that share. So the workforce development in the interim is like the original evaluation criteria just with respect to workforce development. Had a high score if met all the objectives are sustainable workforce policy. We got that snippet at the end. but has all the requirements obviously around prevailing wage and local hires and certified electricians and apprenticeship programs. That if it meets all those, then it's a high score. Medium was didn't meet all the objectives, but had prevailing wage, skilled and trained workforce and local hire commitments, and then low didn't meet those, obviously. So pretty easy there, high, medium, low. If you go to the next slide, please, we'll show you the current revised interim, and there, Jerry, to answer your question, is the neutral. So high is still the same. I'll note there's no requirement here for a PLA, project labor agreement with labor union. That's one way to achieve a high, because it typically includes all of those that are consistent with the workforce policy, but it's not a requirement to have a PLA. You can still score a high if you don't have a PLA, but still achieve all the objectives of the workforce policy. Medium plus is still similar. It is the same as we need the old medium prevailing wage, skilled trade workforce, and local hire. There's a medium minus now. Of course, we're breaking it down with a high, medium plus, medium low, or medium minus. Medium minus is the requirements of the Inflation Reduction Act. So the federal legislation has some labor requirements not as stringent as our workforce policy, but again, that's where a lot of because that gives incentives to a lot of developers, a lot of them are aiming for that, so they can get the tax incentives associated with the IRA. So that we have some benefit, even though we prefer out of medium plus high objectives between that. The neutral here is they haven't figured it out yet. So some projects now, especially 3, 4, 5 years out from being online, or a couple of years from construction, if they don't have those arrangements made, we really can't score them. So they have neutral, and then low obviously is does not demonstrate those, and definitely is not stated that they will not be made notice commitments.
Can the medium minus be turned into neutral plus?
You're right. We can take that feedback. We were thinking about it.
It's.
We were thinking about a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that seemed too easy. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe we'll just keep mixing around a little bit.
Yeah, neutral plus and make them work a little bit.
We could do a low plus if you want, even to make a neutral a low plus and the medium a high double minus.
Something like that. But medium minus doesn't make any sense.
We can take that back. Sure.
Medium minus means they got it. We don't really like it, but you're there. But neutral plus means, that's kind of offensive if I'm putting in a contract and I got a neutral.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to upgrade that. How do I upgrade that? We'll come with a plan, dude.
It's kind of matter of grade inflation too, right?
Right.
Some people, some classes, C plus is good,
Right.
But
Right.
B minus maybe feel a lot different.
Right.
So how would we ever accept a contract that was neutral on workforce policy? Because they might end up in, with no policy.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Frankly, it'd be rare that we would. This is 1 of 6, obviously, right? So it's possible that there were no commitments made to workforce development. Again, unlikely that we would select it, but in that world, it could have great value to our customers. It could have great community benefits, and be smack dab in the middle of our community because they have it checks all labor boxes, but they don't have a labor plan. But that's possible. Yeah. So as we evaluate all these, right, it is a blending of the 6. Typically, again, with experienced developers or developers who are good at what they do and providing projects to us. They understand how we select this. We post this, announce this on the solicitation itself, so they know the rubric, and so usually they'll go out of their way to make sure they provide a compelling project, at least with a medium to high score in each of them. So it's unlikely, but certainly possible. So that's the update on where we are now. Again, this is really just background for upcoming the upcoming revisions later this year. And I'll include it here as well. It just gives a snippet from the Inclusive and Sustainable Workforce Policy, noting that it does relate to things outside of PPAs. Just section 2 of the workforce policy is specific to PPAs, and so you see here the requirements for PPA in section 2A. And again, all the things that we talked about, local hire, and as well as contractors, electricians, and apprenticeship, and you see listed here. So that's how it currently works. There have been suggestions over time, I think, to have more specific requirements in the evaluation criteria itself, but then we have kind of 2 different policies, 2 documents, and risk conflict or kind of versioning issues. So I think the goal here will be as we move forward with the evaluation criteria to keep pointing to the workforce policy so that we work consistent across that. But again, we can always update one or both as you all report and the community sees fit. So that's the update. Happy to take any questions, but no action at this point.
Well, first, are there any comments from the folks?
There are no hands raised.
Okay.
This wasn't exciting enough for the public. I'm sorry. We'll do better next time.
I actually thought it was very interesting and exciting, and I feel like people probably do too. One quick comment. You have the right number to do A through F, and I actually think that will put more pressure on people because people make that on people or on our people bidding or being a part of that process. Because everyone has at some point received a grade that they weren't happy with. So I like that idea. My other comment, would be for like it meets our ISWF. I think I said that in the correct
We're just
order.
trying to throw out as many complex items.
Right. That it meets that it falls into medium plus or high, but correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't appear that that accounts for what percentage it meets, because I know during that negotiating process that sometimes it's like a 50% commitment for skilled workforce or labor, or a 70% or 80%. And I think it's worth thinking about having a system that would include that, because I think it's probably, I think we could come to a consensus that 75% or higher deserves a higher score than below that. And 100% gets a gold star or something, but.
It's A plus, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's really good point. Appreciate that. So it really is pretty binary, but
Right.
bringing it down to one grade in these classes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sir.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can go back to that table that shows all the different categories real quick. I know this is focused on workforce development, but it kind of ties back to that question earlier by Sonia and community benefit versus what happened in Acumba. And I know at the last, is Sonia still on? I just remember that the last board meeting, one of the staff did present what was going on in more detail on the Raleigh power purchase agreement. And one of the things they were working on was the community benefits and how that would be done. I don't remember the details, but it was discussed at the last board meeting. I believe it was the last board meeting. And maybe that could be revisited. But so this table, where's the
One before.
The one before?
One or two before, all the bright colors in the Excel sheet.
That one, yeah. So that's used to evaluate internally where the top firms rank, and then there's negotiation going on and finalizing what the workforce, I imagine, would be and what the community benefits would be. So I think that's just that's a framework to move forward to select someone and then work with them on providing that workforce and providing those community benefits, what the staff will do when they negotiate. So we appreciate that kind of effort, and that's very important. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the comment, and if I can respond as well. And we, as we've iterated the evaluation criteria, we've also iterated both our announcement, right, obviously to make clear what our community benefits preferences are, and to reflect the evaluation criteria as well, and as well as the offer form that we submit with it. It's gotten long and complex, but so we gather a lot more information too about what plans are for projects close to the community and their outreach strategy they've had, as well as the plans for workforce development. So we've got a lot of very set of information to evaluate and score these.
And if memory serves me correctly, following up on what Larry said, it was mentioned that the community benefits were kind of going to the county or the city of Raleigh or something, and not really, there was really no community type benefit to it. It was going to the community or the leadership in the community, but I didn't see how it was going to trickle down, right, to the residents in the community, workforce, and all that kind of stuff.
If I recall correctly, I think that was the community benefits package involved in there, the permitting process, right? With
Right.
Either Joint County or the city. Yeah, so I think that was negotiated there to provide, I think there were,
Educational and.
yeah, and oh, sorry, all the projects kind of blur my mind. I know Andrea was leading this one, but yeah, I think that what we've seen, commitments to, local
Training.
local, yes, local public safety officials, or, and their departments or, grants, those they contact as well. So those are typical, yeah, sure. Noted that some of those are, kind of seem to be given more to the city itself as opposed to.
Yeah, it seems like it just goes into the general fund. Not really anything environmentally specific or climate action needed, which would be interesting.
Yeah, certainly advanced.
Sir.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, in the rare case where an inexperienced developer did submit a proposal and didn't meet the workplace policy and scored low, is there an opportunity in the procurement process to allow them to amend their proposal or negotiate?
Yes, yeah, we're not so prescriptive that we say, hey, you get one chance and, you can't change it ever again. And we do try to stick to a pretty transparent, consistent process. So, if we're gonna allow one party to resubmit, and to, make edits, we'll allow others to do so, but certainly, I think it's evolved throughout negotiations also. Those folks, understand their sourcing plans or their procurement sometimes costs, their costs can be here and there, or it could be their, they finally update their workforce policy or that's kind of come into alignment. So we will adjust, and
There's a question from the community, Rob Howard.
Yes. Rob, you should be able to unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Got it. I don't think I won't take the whole 3 minutes. I was really asking or wondering, I was looking at the process and you went through quite a bit and I may have missed it, but is there incentive to actually, or a way someone can get some credit for working with local, diverse businesses in the process, partnering with them? Because a lot of times what happens is these grading processes really benefit the larger companies that have a lot more capacity, but this is an excellent opportunity in my opinion to start or to get extra points for working with and helping to build capacity with smaller organizations, businesses, contractors, educational groups that can help you with your workforce piece, but doing it on a local level. Again, we start talking about community impact, but you have to be deliberate if we're going to be successful. So it was just really a thought. I didn't see that, and this may be at a higher level, but anything that would push towards actually connecting with, working with local, small, diverse, veteran business enterprises. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. I believe that's it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Okay.
Item number 6. Update on peak load reduction pilot project. That's a mouthful.
Could have been longer. Good evening, Chair. Thank you for having me. This is Colin Santulli, Director of Programs. I'm here to provide an update on the peak load reduction pilot project. You all have heard us present pilot project concepts at the May board meeting here, as well as at the April strategic planning session. A few weeks ago at the July board meeting, the board approved our fiscal year budget. And as part of that, we had a $2 million allocation for a multi-year pilot project budget. We are moving fast and hoping to implement pilot projects to try to make an impact as soon as we can. We anticipate bringing a pilot project to the board in a few weeks, as well as the approval of a contract mechanism to make it possible. Next slide. So the goal of this pilot project is, as it states, is to reduce load during peak hours and during our summer months, our peak months. You'll hear, and every time we're presenting a pilot project, also, the goal of every pilot is to evaluate these concepts to see if they can be scalable to larger future programs. That is the intent of the pilot project budget, after all. With this specific pilot, what we're trying to do here is effectively install projects into commercial and industrial customers to deliver those peak load reductions this summer. The reason we're moving so fast is that we're trying to chase this peak that we expect to happen, typically happens in early September. So these will be primarily lighting and HVAC projects that will be installed, as I said, in commercial industrial customers. And ideally, if we can move at the schedule we have laid out, they'd be installed at the end of August. And so we would hit that anticipated peak in September. We're using a pay for performance model. So this uses a CPUC's avoided cost curve. And to keep it simple, effectively that provides a different incentive for those reductions at each hour of the day, each day of the year. So the reductions are really valuable during those peak hours, during those peak months. As a result, FDCP, we're also actually only paying for the savings that we realize. So the pay for performance model is different than a traditional energy efficiency program, which pays for expected savings or modeled savings. This program will allow us to incentivize these customers, and then we'll actually be creating a control group of similar buildings. So you think about if it's a warehouse with lighting upgrades, we're going to create a control group, or our partners will create a control group and actually measure the energy during the same period of time to see what the actual savings this equipment installed created. And we will pay for those those reductions. We're going to pay for a fair amount of those. We're going to pay a lot if those reductions happen during peak hours, and we pay less if they happen not during the peak hours. The budget we're looking at is approximately $550,000. This includes $100,000 of in-kind support from Calpine and their partner Recurve. We're hoping to use our leverage an existing contract that we have with Calpine Energy Services. They're our back office provider. And they have a partner, Recurve, who offers this kind of service and program to other CCAs. It probably wouldn't be possible for us to make these reductions this summer if we didn't have an existing contract in place. As far as the reductions we're expecting, we won't know this until we actually enroll the projects. So there's still some TBD elements of the program design, but given this is moving so fast, we wanted to bring it to you now, as opposed to waiting until next month and the month after. As I mentioned, we're going to have an evaluation report, and we expect that by the end of the calendar year, and which could, in theory, inform a broader program design that would go into potentially our budget ask for next fiscal year. That concludes the update today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public?
There are no hands raised.
Any from the committee? Sir? Larry?
Yes, Lawrence Emerson, and it sounds like an exciting project, and wish you success on that. I had kind of it's related because reducing the impact to the peak load. Years ago, about 4 years ago, when I had my solar and battery backup added, I was told I could not use my battery to add energy to the grid to help during the peak time. I could only use it for my own home use. Has that changed? Is that a possibility to do, you know, like VPP, where virtual power plants are combining energy storage from different resources? But is there anything for residential that allows us to put energy back into in the future? Or
the short answer is technically it's possible, yeah, but we should dig into that at an ad hoc meeting. That's the kind of the perfect topic that we can get way in the weeds on, and we will bring it back to the full committee in the ad hoc report.
That's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
All right.
Item number 7, recommend board approve the language Let me read it from my paper because it's sort of. Recommend approval of proposed language access policy to the Board of Directors.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Newman. I'm the Senior Account Services Analyst with San Diego Community Power. Last month, we brought to you the update that we would be presenting a language access policy. That draft is complete. It's posted on our website. I believe you also have a printed version. We brought this to the Community and Equity Ad Hoc Committee. There were no concerns or questions with the draft as it exists. We did receive the feedback that it's important to ensure that the Spanish translations are unique to San Diego dialect, not Spanish from Spain. So that is definitely something that we've identified as a need. But ultimately just wanted to present it to the CAC committee at large, or the committee at large, and see whether there was any feedback or concerns or additions or edits that anyone would like to make, or as the chair of the ad hoc committee, if David Harris had anything to add from your perspective.
Yeah, overall,
I thought that the policy is really setting the standard for other CCAs. And I was really pleased to see how comprehensive this policy is and how it can only get better.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to add, this is definitely a starting point. I don't think it captures everything that we need to do, but I think it's a good starting point for us to start implementing some procedures and processes and have some guidelines to ensure that our services and information is, equally accessible to everyone. Yes. Well, sorry, I don't know. Can I call on people
Sure.
to answer?
Carolyn Schofield, Chula Vista. I wanted to follow up on what David said too, because I think this is really important and it's a great policy. But one of the things I wanted to ask was about training. So SDCP staff will receive training, but I think that we would all benefit from that too as CAC members, because we're all interacting with our communities as well. And I just wondered if that was considered as part of the training or how that would work.
Yeah, we'd be happy to add that to the policy. And we could include CAC and board as well.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions? Sir?
It just, I know the community power plant, you had Spanish and Tagalog. So this range access policy is going to focus on those languages?
Yeah, so actually we use data from census data. So our core languages, which are outlined in the policy, are Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Arabic, and Chinese. Those were identified through census data as being the most non-English prominent languages spoken at home.
So Vietnamese, Chinese, and what was it?
Tagalog and Arabic.
And Arabic. Okay.
So, and Chinese is both simplified and traditional.
Thank you.
That's what I was, okay.
Any more questions? No questions from the public?
There are no hands raised.
So do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the policy.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Can you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Committee member Committee member Vasilakis.
Aye.
Committee member Emerson.
Approve.
Committee member Harris.
Approve.
Committee member Cazares. Aye. Committee member Hammond.
Aye.
Committee member Jans.
Aye.
Committee member Schofield.
Aye.
Committee member Sclafani.
Aye.
Secretary Webb.
Aye.
Vice Chair Castaneda.
Aye.
And Chair Price.
Aye.
Motion carries with all committee members voting yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item 8, update on programs ad hoc committee. Larry?
Oh.
Let me get refocused here. Let's see. Where did I put my notes here?
Is it behind your iPad?
Oh, it's right here. It's my right, it's easy. Okay, so yes, we had our first meeting, July 5th. We're gonna be meeting the first Wednesday every month, so next one will be August, the 2nd at 4 p.m. And it was a digital or Zoom meeting. We had myself, Carolyn, and Peter were in attendance. Peter had a little difficulty using the Teams software and requested if we could go with Zoom. We discussed some of the different programs, the green tar programs, and it was asked, what does a green tar mean? And it's and that's using the solar and with some discounts or benefits to the rates to people in the disadvantaged communities or for community solar projects. So we also got some early indications, some pilot projects, discussion of education outreach. There was some discussion of regional energy network, and I don't really remember the details of that myself, but it was a first good meeting to get started, and I think Matthew, you're going to join us next time. Yes, and who else was? And Anna was, yes, not available. So we're just going to keep moving forward. It's the ad hoc committee, so it's not permanent, but I think going to go through the rest of this year and maybe it's into some of next year, and we'll keep working on these programs. The key to some of these green tar programs is they sound good, but we need to implement them. And we really want to find sponsors that can get involved and be working on these. So we have to, our job is to work with the staff and find sponsors and to really make some things happen with these kind of projects. So that's the report. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the public, ma'am?
There are no hands raised.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to thank staff. Carolyn Schofield, Chula Vista. Thanks staff for really doing a deep dive on the green tariff programs. Because that was great. And they answered a lot of questions and it was very helpful. So.
Yeah, I think it was Tessa Filbar was the main person on that. Yes, he did a good job.
Any other comments from the committee? Thank you, Mr. Emerson. We just did, that was number 9. We're moving to number 9, right? Updated on Community and Equity Ad Hoc Committee. I will turn it over to David Harris.
Thank you, Chair Price. The Community and Equity Ad Hoc Committee held its first meeting on July 7th. We'll be meeting every first Friday of the month from 9 to 10:30. Members of the committee include Chair Price, Vice Chair Castaneda, Lauren Caceres, Tara Hammond, and myself. I was elected the chair of the ad hoc subcommittee. We talked about the committee's charter. We reviewed and provided input on the language access policy that we just voted on. We also provided input on the community outreach component of the DAC, GT, and CSGT programs. And we discussed the best ways for staff to share outreach and volunteering opportunities with CAC members. We came up with a list of proposed topics for future meetings. Some of these include receiving a presentation on CalCCA's Equity Committee and best practices, developing pillars for an SDCP equity, accessibility, inclusion, and diversity policy, and reviewing and providing input on a CAC communications and advocacy toolkit. Our next meeting will be on Friday, August 4th. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the public?
There are no hands raised.
Any committee member? Well, thank you, Mr. Harris. I wasn't able to attend. I was in New Orleans. It was a very interesting place. And just so I meant to say this on the last thing. Not only is there a difference in Hispanic dialects, there's a difference in Black dialects, because I didn't know what them people were talking about. They didn't look like this. So we may at some point work on that later on too.
Chair Price, Tara did raise her hand.
Okay,
Tara.
It was on the next slide when I raised it, so feel free to introduce the slide. I had a nomination, but I can wait until we're at that point.
Okay, we will now move on to item number 10. Election of chair, vice chair, and secretary for fiscal year 2023. For the CAC standard operating procedures, officers may be nominated or self-nominated and elected every July meeting by a simple majority vote of the CAC. Officers may be re-elected for up to 3 terms. Today we'll be taking the vote to elect a new chair and secretary as the CAC members in these roles have been termed out, and either re-elect the current vice chair or elect a new one. Megan, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any hands raised for the public.
Okay, I will now turn it over to the CAC members for nominations and comments.
Hi, I would like to nominate Matthew as chair.
Matthew Vasilakis. Do you accept the nomination, sir?
I will accept it, yes.
That looked like you were
Thank you.
grudgingly, but you didn't look like you did. But thank you. So now we vote. We need a motion.
I believe I see a hand raised down
Oh,
there.
yes, ma'am.
I also have another nomination for chair. I'd like to nominate David Harris from the city of La Mesa. He's been a big part of building electrification and has been advocating for CCAs for long before this came about. So I'll make that nomination as well.
Any more?
Chair,
Sir?
I would like to make a nomination. Tony Sclafani, City of Chula Vista. I'd like to point out that San Diego Community Power has a mission to provide choice to the member communities, and through those choices, create platforms for members of the community to advance. And I think with that being the case, I would like to see the chair position go to someone who kind of represents all of those different special nuances of San Diego. And so I would like to nominate Aida Castaneda, who represents our neighbor community to Chula Vista, National City, for chair.
Okay, this is not in my ratings. I don't know what's down, so. Yeah, you didn't write this down.
I think we have to check in with both David and Aida to see if they accept the nominations.
And Matt.
Well, we already checked with Matt.
Oh, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, and then take a vote. Is that correct?
Aida, you accept the nomination, because everybody knows you don't have nothing to do.
Thank you for the nomination, but I will respectfully decline. I'm at incredible capacity, so I won't be able to meet the demands of the chair. But thank you for the opportunity to serve on this capacity.
You're being vice chair. David?
Yes, I accept.
Thank you. So 2 have been accepted. Now what do we do?
So, Mr. Chair, this could be handled in one of 2 ways. The committee could either go down the line and state their preferred nominee and vote that way, or there could be, if there's a motion and then a second, then there's a motion and the second on the floor. And to elect a particular candidate, there would be a vote on that motion. If it succeeds, that person is appointed. If not, then there could be a subsequent motion for a different candidate.
May I comment on the suggestion?
Sure.
I don't think the second process is democratic. For the reason that if there is a nomination, or if there's a motion on one particular candidate, it's like railroading that person. It's like a race to who gets nominated first and therefore voted upon. So I would prefer a statement of who our favorite candidate is. If
Does
it's
the
all the
rest of the
same.
committee agree with that?
I agree with that.
Agree with that? So as my last official act, I can actually mandate some shit. Cool. That's what we're getting ready to do. Ma'am? Yes.
I get to say. Well, this is incredibly difficult, so. But I'm gonna go ahead and vote for Matt. But
Thank you. Anthony?
Going down the line here.
Yeah.
Tony Sclafani, City of Chula Vista. Like Carolyn, I find it to be an incredibly difficult decision, and I feel both candidates are competent, and I would like to abstain.
While I have enjoyed an immense amount of feedback back and forth with David, I would prefer Matt in this case. And I hope David will forgive me.
No hard feelings.
I hope David forgives Gary and I vote for Matt.
I vote for Matt.
I'm doing hashtag town over here as secretary. In the future, can we have secret ballot on things?
You can be a coward all your life, you know?
Be nice. Anna Webb, Imperial Beach, Secretary Webb, and I will, because of what Lauren said about David, I want to vote for David. Although I love you, Matt.
David?
Yes, I will cast a vote for myself. And Matt, I think you are equally qualified.
Thank you.
So as I nominated David, I will cast my vote for David, but I will also say that Matt and I have worked professionally together on these issues a bit, and I have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you.
Matt?
I vote for myself, and I also have such high praise and regard for David, all the work that you've done over the years. But love you.
Larry?
I think both of them would do a good job. Matt is very knowledgeable on a lot of technical things and got good experience, and David is has a good way of speaking and talking. So if whoever gets to be the president, maybe the other can be the vice president, and that maybe they can follow each other's footsteps. I'm going to vote for David this time.
So what's the count?
Committee.
Oh,
I have-
Cara?
I had nominated Matt. I will vote for Matt. David, looking forward to continuing working with you as well.
So it looks like committee member Vasilakis has the majority. So
Welcome, Mr. Vasilakis.
Congratulations.
Thank you also, David. Thank you for stepping up and agreeing to, go through it, and you'll be here a while.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have to ask for a public comment, do I?
There's no hand raised.
Okay. Now for the vice chair. No?
Secretary. Or you said secretary and chair. You didn't say vice chair.
Aida is not timed out. Termed
Oh,
out.
you're not termed out?
She's not termed out, so we're not voting.
She was hoping that we voted her out. I just look at her face. She wanted to- Cause she didn't say nothing.
Just to note, the terms. It says for the terms of for each calendar year, even though she's remaining on the committee, the terms for the officer positions are only for a year.
So we have to vote for all three.
Oh,
Okay,
So you can vote,
Well,
in
you were
theory, you
right.
can vote for another vice chair,
theoretically,
theoretically.
would you like to nominate somebody as a? Cause we're in the nomination process now. So would you like to nominate somebody?
Yes. I'm gonna go ahead and nominate Tara Hammond for vice chair.
Okay, Tara, are there any other nominations?
Does she accept?
I will accept. I did 2 years with Chair Price and would be happy to work closely with Matt on this.
I don't know how to take that, but thank you. I don't know what that meant.
I'm always complimenting you, Eddie.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So we gotta vote, we don't have to vote, right? So there's
Are there other
only,
nominations?
yes, ma'am.
I am gonna nominate David for vice chair as well.
Okay. David, do you accept?
I accept.
Okay, thank you. So the process is, I'll start on this end this time.
Oh,
Can we just confirm there are no other nominations?
Are there any other nominations?
And then we can start.
You have a nice deep voice that scared the shit out of me. Like police. Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll start from this end. Larry?
I'll withdraw. I'd be happy to do it, but I'm also happy for David to do it as well.
Okay, so now we have a conundrum, or we don't.
We have a consensus.
We have a consensus.
yes.
I vote for David. I was going to vote for David.
Okay.
Formally vote.
Since we did for the chair, I think we should handle it the same way.
Gladly vote for David. Thank you, David.
I passed my vote for David.
Okay, David, you're voting for David?
I'm voting for myself.
Cool.
David.
David,
David,
David.
well, there it is. Whoop, there it is.
David,
All right.
Thank you, David.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
David, now we have to do secretary, correct? Are there any nominations for secretary?
And who really likes taking notes?
That was rather ominous. I don't scared off anybody who might have wanted to do it.
can we get clear? Anna, I believe this was you've already done 3, so you aren't able to do it. You've been great at it. But is that correct?
It's kind of a blur. I mean,
Yeah.
I started in 2020, so 2021, 22, yes, this is 3 years, yes.
So it's my understanding you weren't able to continue serving unless someone tells us otherwise. But I don't, that's what I'm looking for clarification on.
The language includes a limit of up to 3 terms.
So would anybody like to nominate the secretary?
Nobody wants to take
Damn.
notes. I'm just telling you right now.
And I believe the secretary's job has got less heavy because now we have a clerk. So you're really just the type of stuff we don't never see.
No, I do, but I share it so that
Right,
she can look at what I type and kind of compare notes.
right. So if that makes anybody feel better about being secretary.
I would like to nominate Lauren Casares
there we go.
for secretary.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Do we have to go through the same process to vote her in, right?
Do you accept?
I accept.
Okay,
Okay.
so we went that way, so it's you again.
Okay.
I'll start then. I'll vote for her.
Okay,
Okay, Lauren.
I'll vote for Lauren.
Lauren,
Lauren.
Lauren. Lauren.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Well, hit the gavel. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the next leadership. What do you say? There's a lot of power down there. That's the heavy side of the room.
right here.
Now we'll move on to, and thank you everyone for being nominated, accepting the nominations and agreeing to work. We will now move on to item 11, update on CAC fiscal year 2022-2023 work plan.
It's going to be me, this is CEO Mandy Fresco, I'm Community Engagement Manager. So I wanted to provide an update on where we are in implementing the work plan that we agreed to. So last month, this committee provided feedback on our solar discount program, the legislative. In our language access policy to ensure information accessibility across our customer base. Today, we have progressed this work plan by discussing our equitable, inclusive, and sustainable workforce policy and our regulatory and legislative affairs. As our ad hoc committees chairs noted, the scope of work of these committees will allow us to further unpack some of the priorities that you've all set forward, and including taking a more equitable approach to everything that we do as SCCP staff and our policies, our energy bid evaluation criteria and power procurement efforts, creating meaningful educational presentations for the CAC at large, and supporting staff in developing and promoting program offerings for customers that align with the community power plan you recommended adopting earlier this spring. Before they dissolve, the ad hoc committees will have an opportunity to revise our CAC work plan to develop a calendar year 2024 CAC work plan that staff can present to this group for adoption in January. Thank you all for the work that you do, and we do look forward to working with you in a deeper level through the ad hoc committees to really make sure that we are keeping track and staying on top of our goals for our work plan. Happy to take any questions or recommendations.
Any questions from the public?
There are no hands raised.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, then. I do have one question or comment or something. Where, because I know there's been a lot of back and forth about the NEM policy. When will that be presented to us? And does that go into one of those boxes up there?
Yeah, we can discuss what that could look like. And I see some faces in the group, but yeah, we can discuss what that could look like. And
I didn't hear what you mumbled. You mumbled something.
we could discuss, what a, coming to either an ad hoc committee or the CAC at large could look like. So I'm happy to kind of chat offline, just to kind of like make sure that it makes in the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions from the committee, and no questions from the public? And last but not least, discussion of potential agenda items for board of directors meetings and director comments. Do any CAC members have recommendations on potential items for our board of directors?
I'm going to be a broken record here, but recommending discussing net metering. I did talk to staff this week about it, and they're working on some answers, but I really do think the board needs to get more involved and understand some options and how to push SDG&E for the information that SDCP is looking for to make decisions.
Yeah, because it's going to be a significant impact on new solar companies, for sure. Any other recommendations or comments?
I just wanted to ask Zio, is there an effort underway to fill the positions on the CAC that are vacant currently? And that's something that the board approves once the nominations are made.
Yes, there is. We've communicated with the directors from the board who currently have a vacancy, which as a reminder is Imperial Beach and the County of San Diego. So we're working to get those nominations approved by the board. We will have an update in the coming months.
So that won't be going to the next board meeting?
At this time, no, but that could change.
You have a question?
No, I decided to hold it back. I'm not ready for them to talk about it yet, but soon.
Well, I will continue to think that it's important that the board and all the CAs somehow move forward, push legislation for to help with geothermal energy, and I haven't heard anything back from their earlier comments that I've made in past meetings. I'd like to get some feedback from the staff and maybe from the board. What do they think of the statewide effort to help accelerate geothermal in California? Thank you.
You have a hand raised, Chair. Sonia, I'm sorry.
Sonia Robinson.
So, yeah, Sonia, you can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes. My apologies.
Thank you, Chair Eddie, for the pronunciation correction. And it is Sonia or Sonia. And I just want to thank you, Chair Price, for leaning in and for your leadership with our Community Advisory Committee for the last 3 terms. You have done remarkable to make sure that the voice of our communities is heard and is included, and have made tremendous advancement. And so I definitely wanted to share my appreciation as a resident and citizen in our county and the work that we've done before even San Diego Community Power name even existed. So I just want to say I appreciate your work, and I hope that you're still will remain on the board or work closely with them. And I also want to congratulate you, Matt, as being our next chair. And I believe with your community engagement and involvement, you will also lean in for our voice, making sure that the voice of the community is also included. And also want to congratulate you as well, Vice Chair David Harris. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, Sonia, Eddie is still on the board. He's not leaving.
Yeah.
Sounds like a threat.
No other questions, comments, or concerns from the committee members? So we're adjourned, right?
Wait, okay, yeah, announcements, yeah. There's not.
We did announcements, didn't we?
That was board items.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you know how to do this, Matt. 'Cause you teach me how to do this when you sit over there.
I will just echo Sonia's comments,
No
Eddie,
shit.
on you being a great first chair these last 3 years. And looking forward to the new leadership as well.
You're here?
Yes.
Likewise. Committee member announcements.
So I have an announcement about the Solar Core Fellowship. This is from Grid Alternatives, and in Chula Vista, there are several of us working on trying to get the news out more in our community about grid. So I have this information. So it's a fellowship that is 40 hours a week. It's 11 months total, and there have 4 positions in San Diego between outreach, clean mobility, construction, and workforce development. So I have flyers here. I can hand them out, or anyone else who wants them, plenty. So I wanted to let you know.
I'm feeling kind of emotional with that right there. I got into all this because of that Solar Core program, like 10 years ago, right? When I was at a very low place in my life, and they hired me, and they didn't know who Eddie was, and Eddie didn't know who Eddie was at that time, right? And so I grew into this thing called the energy space, right? As a Solar Core for Grid Alternatives. At the end of my 11 months, I thought I was going to have to go find something. They said, I don't know where you're going, but you're not leaving here, right? And I just stayed and got into, and I've been in the solar industry since I've been with Grid, but I have not yet to do an install. So, you know, I do not install solar panels. I have never installed solar panels because I'm scared of 2 things: heights and electricity. I'm sharing with you my deepest fears, and you're laughing like, okay.
We can take care of the height
But
situation.
I was also able to show other people in the community and other places that Black men are more than just laborers, right? We're not just here for workforce development to learn how to put solar panels on top of a roof, because I don't do that, right? But there's other stuff within this industry, architects, engineers, lawyers, and all this kind of stuff that I've been able to humbly broaden the aspect of what it means to have equitable inclusion into this space, right? Whether it's workforce development or policy development and all this other stuff, right? So when I saw that earlier, it took me all the way back to when I didn't know nothing about energy, right? I'm a 63-year-old Black man from East Oakland, California. We don't really get into stuff like this, right? But something resonated with me. And I think it was the ability to help my community, right? Grid was selling the environmental aspect of saving birds and trees and stuff. And I focused on the money, you know, and knowing that if we could save a low income person who is on a fixed income and is 80 years old, and we can save her $100 a month, that can help redo my community, right? Just $100 a month is not a lot to some people, but to some people, it's everything because they have to make a decision whether to buy medicine, food, pay their mortgage, pay their insurance, right? Which means there's no money left over to give to their family members, right? And like when I was growing up, and I'll try to shut up, when I was growing up, when my grandmother gave me a quarter, that was like a special quarter. It had magical properties and shit, right? Whatever I bought with it, the sunflower seeds tasted better, or the apple pie or the popsicle, right? But it allowed my grandmother to get into me, right? And she could talk to me like nobody else in my family could talk to me. That didn't keep me out of the penitentiary, but it kept me from going back to the penitentiary. And so I don't think we understand what $100 in a community for a fixed income person can do. So when we're talking about all these fixed rates and $72, that's a lot of money that we're just going to charge somebody, just charge them for like what, right? And that's going to detract from what they're trying to do. You know, I've also been able to provide a lot of solar in communities of concern in San Diego, right? Because it was in my community that I live in, and I know how to talk to my community, right? I made a statement earlier about New Orleans and the language and the lingo. I don't think I could do this in New Orleans, right? But I can do it in California. And so I say all that to say is that somehow I ended up being the chair of the Community Advisory Committee for San Diego Community Power, right? And my wife still doesn't understand this shit. She's like, where you going? I told you where I'm going. But it's also been enlightening for other members in the community to see people of color involved in this at such a level that they want to get involved, right? And I'm able to tell them, because they say it's my lane, right? Energy is my lane. It's like, do you have a light switch? Do you? Okay, well, this is your lane too. You turn the heater on, don't you? You turn the air conditioner on. You need to be knowledgeable about all this kind of stuff. So I appreciate the opportunities it's afforded me to bring this message to my community and to other communities. And I appreciate everybody listening to me because I know I ain't rap tight. I know that, right? But I'm not afraid to speak truth to power. And sometimes that's what needs to happen is, right, speaking truth to power. And the odd thing about that is power appreciates that, right? Because we're in an industry. I know we got a lot of smart people over there. Other people over there, all them smart people. Nobody really knows what the hell's going on in this industry. Everybody's trying to figure something out. Nobody has, okay, this is what we're going to do and it's going to work. Nobody has said that yet. From the DOE in Washington, D.C., to the Energy Commission, to San Diego Community Power. So we have an opportunity here to actually do some pretty powerful paradigm shifting stuff if we're not held back by other stuff, right? Give yourself a chance and just reach out. Reach out to yourself, right? And just move the agenda. Those people, those smart people, they need help, right? Like most of them I've cussed out before, right? And it helps. They said, wow, I never thought about that, Eddie. I sprinkle a lot of, adjectives in there, but so thank you for allowing me to do this. I don't know how long I'm gonna be on this committee because this opportunity has afforded me to do other things. But I do thank you for allowing me to be here. I take this as a, like a part of this. Take some, I'm tired of pins and hats and.
Before we adjourn, can we actually talk about the possibility of going on recess in August?
Oh, yeah, you talk to the new chair and vice chair about that. I'm done.
Yes, so,
We're adjourning now. Matt, you want to come over here and answer?
I think Larry has an announcement.
Oh,
Kind of following, it was a good alternative related. They are the new administrator under the San Diego Air Pollution Control District for the Clean Car for All program, which is really exciting for those. Everybody can't see that, that disadvantaged community map based on SB 535 and also travel areas for communities of concern. Those areas, if you live in those areas and you're income qualified and you have an older 2009 or older vehicle and you want to upgrade, you can get from $9,500 to $11,000 to $12,000 under this program.
Wow.
So people should be aware of that, and this can be stacked, if I understand it right,
With
the
rebates.
California Commercial
rebate.
Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. So it's an excellent program. It's just getting off the ground, and at the next electric vehicle meeting on August the 9th at 6 p.m., we're going to be having them come and do a presentation. You could also log in remotely, but they're going to come and present the program. They've kind of been doing it by that time by about a month, and so the details will be really solidified. But if anybody has any questions, I can send them this flyer, and we want to spread the word. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I have one announcement.
Sure.
Along the lines of programs and funding and communities of concern. Since the last time that we met, I'm talking in this thing, it's not even on here. The Biden-Harris administration announced the Solar for All program, which will be funded through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's a $7 billion program to incentivize distributed solar in low-income and disadvantaged communities. There are going to be 60 grants awarded, and individual states, the 50 states, are eligible to apply and to receive. And then there's additional eligibility for certain nonprofits. I believe San Diego Community Power is monitoring this. I see this as a very large opportunity for San Diego Community Power, potentially all of Cal CCA, to stand out a little bit different from the state of California and secure, really substantial funding for communities of concern. And I wanted to notify everyone here of that, so that you're aware. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I go there?
Just a reminder, there is an opportunity for us to go on recess in August. This would be in line with what I believe the board is looking to do, which is to only hear any time sensitive items if needed be. A recess gives us an opportunity to do a deeper dive on those ad hoc committees, which will continue to meet. So we do not need a formal vote from the CAC to get at a recess, but we do kind of need general consensus. So I thought I would circulate it over here in this group and see if there was any interest in taking a pause for meetings during the month of August.
We could just say, is there any opposition?
Or is there any opposition? That's very clearly stated. Thank you, Secretary Webb.
Previous secretary.
Seeing none?
Yeah.
Recess it is, adjourned.
Thank you.
Pretty cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.